Hello, I'm Charles Goves, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Goves Show, whether you're watching on Rumble or on YouTube or listening via one of the many podcasting platforms. This is the place for you to be inspired to live a life of passion that is guided by your ever-increasing self-awareness about who you are and who you wish to become. Passion is a source of unlimited energy from your soul, your spirit, your heart that enables you to produce extraordinary results. My two books, Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance, articulate why passion is such a crucial element in your life. One of my favorite quotes is that greatness can only be achieved through passion. If you want to be great, be passionate. So let me touch on some current issues this week that also led me to decide what the topic of this week's show would be. President Donald Trump has signed a memorandum of understanding regarding the Iran war. The criticism of that deal from all sorts of strange sources is amazing. Trump derangement syndrome is alive and well. It doesn't matter what Trump does. There are people in the world who will not see past what they hate about Donald Trump. It is simply extraordinary. And the criticism that is hurled at Trump for what he does, in most cases, is based on very limited information. So think about what information you have about all of the circumstances surrounding the whole question of going to war with Iran. We know bugger all. Journalists who are investigative journalists, who are few and far between, they might find out more information, and reading the media can help to enlighten us. But think about the limited basis on which this criticism happens. I have a long list of wonderful steps that Donald Trump has taken. He's made mistakes in his presidency, in his second presidency, but there are a number of excellent things that he has done. I might do a show on that actually, so that you don't fall into the trap of Trump derangement syndrome. In Australia, we've had a new federal budget, and the Labor government, led by a communist called Anthony Albanese, they are under huge pressure. They have proven, Albanese, the Prime Minister, has proven himself to be an amazing liar, and already from the pressure from business, from average people, has forced the government to abandon some of its plans to bring in new laws that are contrary to all the promises that Albanese made in being elected last year. This has led to a wonderful line, because I am no fan of Anthony Albanese, of Fire the Liar, a Fire the Liar campaign that has grabbed the imagination of the Australian people, and they have donated millions to Pauline Hanson's One Nation party to enable that party to succeed and to fire the liar. There are an amazing number of videos in the media highlighting the lies of that politician. Now, in the UK, Keir Starmer as the Prime Minister, he is a disgrace, and particularly because one of the foundations for any successful society is a functioning legal system. Well, in the UK, there are 2 or 3 legal systems that are absolutely making a mockery of the application of law. If you are Islamic, you have a different set of laws applied to you. That attempt is also being made in Australia with the so-called First Nations, and it leads to disaster. Any inhabitant of any country must have one legal process, one legal system, and the proper interpretation of law applied to all the people. Otherwise, Keir Starmer, you are creating a revolution. I'm told by my sources that the English people are getting thoroughly pissed off. Watch this space. It may well be that Keir Starmer is not long for the Prime Ministership as a consequence of the election of a guy called Andy Burnham. We shall see. Next, that two-tier legal system in the UK is particularly relevant to girls being raped by predominantly Islamic men. Rupert Lowe from the Restore Party has shone a light on the thousands of girls raped and with no consequences to these Islamic rapists. I call on the UK government to properly apply the law. It is the stuff of revolutions when the law is not properly applied. The next issue, having seen Nancy Pelosi's unattractive face on television, reminds me of the millions that she has accumulated during her long political career, in excess of $198 million assets have been reported in her name. Where did this money come from? Similarly, the former Premier of Victoria, the state in which I live in Australia, Dan Andrews, has also been reported as being worth millions of dollars. You cannot become worth millions of dollars by being an honest politician. You cannot. Where did Pelosi and Daniel Andrews and other rich current politicians and retired politicians get their money? On top of that is the Jeffrey Epstein case and the pedophilia that appears to be rampant in elite company. Now, it was first reported to me that politicians were engaging in pedophilia back 15 years ago. I was shocked and horrified when I first heard that. I am no longer shocked and horrified. Indeed, it appears to be a serious and an epidemic-style engagement by elites, politicians, and people in high places in this whole engagement in the exercise of pedophilia. I am horrified by it. I want all of us to speak up against it, and I want the Jeffrey Epstein files opened up and full explanations given by those who supported the actions of that man. The honey trap model, many of you are aware of. I suspect that the engagement in pedophilia, which I have a view as to what causes adults to engage in that is a horror that must be talked about, must be publicised, and I believe that the elites and the politicians do not want it talked about and publicised. So with all these politicians behaving badly and the bad behaviours they get up to, turns my mind to this question of how do we hold these bastards to account? How do we hold the politicians to account? I'm not talking about bureaucrats now. That's a different topic. The bureaucrats must be held to account. But I want to focus on the politicians, because the politicians generally tell the bureaucrats what to do. Although if you watch plenty of Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, that wonderful comedy series made in the UK, it's an interesting question as to whether the politicians make the decisions or whether the bureaucrats so influence politicians that it's actually the bureaucrats causing the decisions to be made. How do politicians get elected in a democratic system? I will focus on Australia, but from all of my information, it's very similar to most Western countries. It costs money to be elected. So budding politicians, they might be tapped on the shoulder. Would you like to be elected for one of the parties? And they say yes, and then the money starts flowing. And if they're someone that elites, that people with money, that major benefactors want to be in the parliament, they will receive mega support. Now, that's not all the politicians, but it is really difficult to get elected without having significant financial resources given to you to be able to run a campaign that grabs the attention of the people. Then once they're elected, how do they arise to the position of Prime Minister? First of all, to become a deputy minister or a secretary, and then they become ministers, and then they might become a Prime Minister. How does that happen? I see much evidence of excellent politicians not advancing, of remaining as backbenchers for the whole of their political careers, in many cases, long political careers. I make the distinction between conviction politicians and career politicians. Conviction politicians go into politics because they are convinced that the country needs to be better governed, and they have convictions about certain values, principles, philosophies. Career politicians, on the other hand, look on becoming a politician as a wonderful gravy train. Our job is to identify who the career politicians are and who the conviction politicians are. A good place to start is to have a look at the career that they had before they got into politics. If they were administrators of trade unions, if they were advisors to politicians, if they never had a proper job in their lives, if they've never been involved in private enterprise business, it's highly likely that they are career politicians. I say that having an understanding of business, of entrepreneurship, of how true wealth is created is crucially important to the thinking of a politician. The career politicians have never had to worry about their income source. It just keeps coming regardless of what's happening to a nation, to an economy. Now, the progress of politicians. I have grave suspicions about how that happens. And I want you to think about the Albanese Labor government that has 94 elected candidates in the House of Representatives, and some out of the 76 senators, I think Labor have about 30 senators. So in the parliamentary party, there's some 124 elected representatives, and there are only 27, 28 ministers out of 124. So there's a lot of people who don't become, a lot of elected representatives who don't become ministers. It is my view that the progress into the upper echelons of a political party, of a parliamentary party, depends on whether you behave yourself as a good boy to maintain the status quo. I then raise my thoughts around pedophilia. I raise my thoughts around people behaving badly. I raise my thoughts about people willing to be corrupted. I raise my thoughts about politicians having vast amounts of unexplained wealth, like Nancy Pelosi, like Daniel Andrews. I want an explanation of where they got their money, but that's the way that it happens. These people are in a club, and if you follow the rules of the club, you will advance up the totem pole. If you don't, if you have convictions around the proper way to behave, you will remain as a backbencher for the rest of your life. I'm not happy about the behaviour of many politicians in many countries, and particularly Australia, UK, Canada, America. So how can we increase the chances of better behaviour by these politicians? And where that leads to is your own benefit. The life that you're able to live in your country, the life that I'm able to live in my country, is hugely impacted by the behaviour of these politicians. So whilst I talk about you being self-aware and pursuing your passion, if politicians stuff up the economy of our nation, it's very much harder to be able to pursue passion. It might be that we have to leave our country, like my parents had to leave Hungary back in 1947 when they went into a refugee camp to come to Australia, a place of great freedom that used to be great freedom that is now being attacked by politicians. So there's a real benefit for you in ensuring that politicians behave better. So I've got some practical strategies, and because I don't want this to be too long, I want to throw these ideas at you and to inspire you to think deeply about what you might do to help us have better politicians. Now, the first step is we need to discuss badly behaving politicians from mere incompetence. Two different issues, and life certainly is very complicated. So I make mistakes. You've heard me talk about mistakes on previous shows. If you haven't, go and check them out. You cannot get better without making mistakes. I forgive honest mistakes. I do not forgive fraudulent, corrupt mistakes. So we have to make this decision. Are these politicians badly behaving, criminally behaving, or are they just incompetent? I forgive incompetence, and then we shine a light on that incompetence and we just keep them as backbenchers. That's one of the reasons why politicians don't progress up the chain, because quite frankly, they are just not good enough. Secondly, we need to be specific about the bad behaviours, and I call them bad behaviours. So they will be evil behaviours, corrupt behaviours, criminal behaviours, deliberately incompetent behaviours. My word is bad behaviours for the purposes of this conversation. We need to specify them. We need to first go, I reckon that politician's behaving badly. Next step, publish these bad behaviours. So start now. You can start publishing the specific bad behaviours of any politician that you think is behaving badly. And when I say politician, I mean a national politician, a state or provincial politician, and local government representatives who are also politicians. Why? Because we elect them. So you publish it. You publish it in social media. Next step, you record the bad behaviours. I call on people who are inspired by this message to set up websites to record the bad behaviour of politicians, because we need in a public place to have a list of these bad behaviours, and we want to shine a light so that the current politicians see that their bad behaviours are being recorded and being added up. And all of us can have a look at that, and each one of us can set up a website. There's a wonderful website called Council Watts for Local Government. There's also the existing opposition political parties that I call on to have a list of bad behaviours by politicians in government. Imagine a list of Daniel Andrews, the Premier, of his bad behaviours, what that would look like. Nancy Pelosi, each transaction that she made in the stock market being published. When she buys, as we've seen Bill Gates buy something incredibly cheap like shares in Moderna, that suddenly, after Moderna gets contracts to provide its jabs for COVID that are then mandated, and the share price of Moderna goes from a few cents to $300 each, it's a great way to make money. So we list the bad behaviours. Then we keep publicising that, but then these politicians retire. So Nancy Pelosi and Daniel Andrews, two specific examples I'll focus on, one in the US, one in Australia. I could pick 20 of them. What do we do? And what's the point of doing something after they've retired from politics? Well, my view is that if the current politicians see the price that I'm telling you, that I'm going to articulate here, that is paid by retired politicians, it might make those current politicians be very careful about whether they behave badly or not. So what are these current steps? Never honour these people in public. If they go out in the public, make their lives miserable in whatever way you can. Make being in public unpleasant for these people. Make them question their freedom to be able to go outside, because they will know that people know they've been bad because of all of this publicity that's been given to their bad behaviours, and that will have a profound impact on their enjoyment of life post-retirement. Never attend an event where the guest speaker is one of these badly behaved retired politicians. And you write a letter to the organiser that says, I love going to your events, but I would never go to an event where Daniel Andrews or Nancy Pelosi is the guest speaker. Those guys are badly behaved, and you might say they're criminal. Now, the question of whether you call somebody criminal or not becomes problematic. You can say, I question them in terms of their corrupt behaviour, and they should be prosecuted for that corrupt behaviour, and be careful with your language. But I'm raising the question. I have great questions about this Daniel Andrews, because there has never been a premier that has caused so much damage to a state as that premier. Next, ban these bad politicians. All businesses should ban these politicians from their services. And to that end, I have worked to set up a website called bandickdan.com. Dick Dan stands for Dictator Dan. I call him Dick Dan because he is a dick. And that website, I urge you to go to it, bandickdan.com, and register your name that you will never have anything to do with this man. And if you have a business, that your business pledges never to provide services to this man or his family, regardless of what they're willing to pay to you. You see, that's where values come in. Are you willing to take money from people like Nancy Pelosi and Daniel Andrews and other badly behaved politicians that they got in questionable, evil, corrupt, criminal ways? Are you willing to do that? I'm not. If Dan Andrews came to me and said he'll pay me $2 million a year to be his advisor, I would tell him to get stuffed. I urge you to understand the decisions that you make based on your values have a profound impact on your feelings about yourself, your integrity. Are you acting consistently in a consistent way with what you actually believe, the values that you hold? If you do, then you wouldn't deal with these badly behaved politicians. You would never support what they do. Next, report all demonstration of unusual wealth by Daniel Andrews and Nancy Pelosi to the tax authorities. Remember, Al Capone never went to jail for killing anybody, but for tax fraud. These, reporting them to the tax authorities and shining a light on this demonstration of wealth in the public is what I call upon. If you see any of these badly behaved retired politicians with unusual wealth, please send me an email. Please publish it. Say, where did they get the money? Unusual wealth is a big, big sign of corruption. And of course, there are elites and very wealthy people who give vast amounts of money to politicians. And right now, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, and his wife are in big trouble because his wife was given $14 million for a charity from organizations that no longer exist, that then had beneficial consequences for the people who made the donations. Follow the money trail. Latin phrase, cui bono. Who's benefiting? Who benefits? We must stop badly behaving politicians enjoying their improper, unearned, corrupt, earned wealth. Next step, when these retired politicians die, investigate their assets when they're under their wills. You see, there is no time limit on pursuing crime. And if these politicians' wealth arose from criminal activities, then the assets of the estate can be recovered by the state. And of course, Daniel Andrews, I assess he's cost Victoria between $100 and $200 billion in increased debt. So why should his family benefit from his unauthorised wealth were he to die? Same with Nancy Pelosi, who's more likely to die early than Daniel Andrews. From these investigations of this unusual, unwarranted wealth, if there have been corrupt payments, then we need to pursue those who made the corrupt payments to these politicians. And that then becomes a warning to those who, it's a distinction. As usual, everything's on a spectrum. If you give money to a politician to support their election, and it comes just because you want that politician elected because of their principles, because of their convictions, but you're not expecting anything in return other than a better run country, that's not corrupt. But if you give money to a politician to support a particular provision that has enormous financial benefits for you, that's corrupt. So we need to pursue the payers of corrupt payments, which is what these in Victoria, it's IBAC, the Independent Board for IBAC against corruption, the Independent Board Against Corruption, I think it's called, and there's a national corruption body as well. The corruption payers need to understand that these payments are criminal, and that if it comes out because we've investigated the wealth of the wealthy retired politicians, then they will be more wary about making these corrupt payments. Next one is, I call on anyone with information to publish the information so that retired politicians and existing politicians are investigated and prosecuted for any criminal behaviours. Of course, if you die, you can't get convicted of a criminal offence, but your assets can be impounded. And then lastly, I say that the laws in Australia and right around the world should be changed so that all retirement benefits for a politician must be forfeited if they are convicted of having received corrupt payments, if they are convicted of criminal actions while they were in Parliament. Of course, it's highly unlikely that such a law would be brought in by politicians, but that's why I recommend these strategies, because these strategies help to get the same result as a law that says politicians forfeit their retirement benefits from the state if they have behaved badly. Who is responsible? Overall, who is responsible for holding politicians to account for better behaviour? I say it's me. And I say it's you. It's the people of each nation who are responsible for holding these politicians to account for the rest of their lives if they have behaved badly and they have unexplained wealth. That's what this show is about. And your awareness of the problem and your decision to do something about it and to share the information. We can all now be civilian journalists. It's shining a light on these behaviours that will help to recover the unearned wealth, but secondly, to hold the current politicians or to warn the current politicians that we will never forget. We will not allow you to enjoy corrupt, criminal, unearned wealth. So don't complain about politicians. Hold them to account. Do something like Julie and I have done with the bandickdan.com site. Set up your own site, be it local politicians, state politicians, federal politicians. Now, if you want to be further inspired by this, look up some jokes on politicians. I don't want to go, I've got a whole bunch of jokes on politicians, like the classic of how do you know a politician is lying? His lips are moving. But there are many others that are fantastic. And our job is to understand that we need politicians, but we cannot let them get away with bad behaviour. 2 ideas on health for you before I go. Firstly, liquid oxygen. I've mentioned it before, I mention it again. Please visit go2life.com.au. Liquid oxygen, I'm profoundly amazed at what a wonderful impact it's had on my energy levels. It's a regime of hydrogen into water, of liquid oxygen and liquid minerals. If you follow the link on the show notes, you will get 10% off. It's had an amazing impact on me. Try it, because your energy is what drives your productivity. Now, passion, as I've said before, is a source of unlimited energy from your soul, but our physical body also needs some support, and liquid oxygen is one way to get that. Secondly, I want to share with you humming. I want you to look up the value of humming. Dr. John Marks, friend of mine, has taught me to hum. And what you do is you put your fingers in your ears, cover your eyes, and hum twice a day for 5 minutes. And you hum, and you can hum a tune, you know. Pick your favorite song. It does wonderful, wonderful things for your health. So, humming and liquid oxygen. So, you might get that I'm somewhat passionate about badly behaving politicians, and you would be right. I suspect that the Albanese government is behaving as it is because money is flowing in very strange places, and it's difficult to show where the money's flowing and how it's benefiting these badly behaved politicians. The strategies I've shared with you will help us to track these monies so that politicians into the future stop thinking that they can get away with it. Better politicians will make your life better in whatever country you are in. So I hope today's show makes a beneficial impact on your life, a life that I consider is meant to be as great as you are capable of making it. And passion is one of your key resources to do that. If you're new to the show, check the links for our foundational principles and my background and my website, charlescovest.com, where you can find my books, my passion speeches and programs, and many other free resources. Please subscribe to the show and share it with your friends, your family, work colleagues. It won't cost you or them anything, except the risk of greater passion, greater awareness, and a greater enjoyment of your life. Again, thanks for watching or listening. And until our next show, may your week be full of ever-increasing passion, health-giving and energy-giving passion, learning, fun, fulfillment, and a willingness to embrace the wonderful challenges that this gift of life gives to you, to me, and to all of those around you. It is through those challenges and the embracing of those challenges that you will become all that you are capable of becoming. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye.